add BX sub synth. So if I want to do some sub harmonic saturation to give it some more body, I will. But I'm looking for the RMS of these 808s or the subs to be around the -20 mark. And when it's combined with the kick, I want them to kind of be not really going past like a -16. But remember, it's instantaneous. So like it's not a true across the board -16 RMS, you know what I mean? Or -18 RMS. It's more of, you got to account for the times when it's not hitting because it's an average. That's how it's kind of calculated. But so once that's there, I do a mastering chain. And so one of the things that I do in the mastering chain is I typically boost the side field with maybe like a back CQ, or I've been using I don't know how to pronounce it, but knife or knife or
NIF.
NIF.
I think NIF. Yeah.
So I've been using the new the NIF EQ from mastering EQ from Plugin Alliance. Yeah. And so I might take that and I might boost the sides by a dB or sometime a dB and a half, because I used to have these mixes that felt like a ball where the middle was really pronounced and then the sides were kind of like not quite where I wanted them. And so I realized if I just kind of boosted that, it helps. And then once I learned how to offset that, I just kept boosting it like in a mastering chain. I'm like, oh, it's cool. It's a little wider. It's a little bit, I don't always do it. Sometimes I dial it back. But so it could be coming from there. And sometimes typically I like mid-side stuff a lot. And I'll do a filter on maybe under 25 on the sides, on the side field. And that in itself, it can create some more space, help you get a little bit more volume, a little more push, but it can also introduce like a little bit of phasing, but not anything that you're noticing or like a normal person would notice, but that could be what you're hearing. I mean, inevitably EQs are going to cause that's how they work, And,
I think I just talked to somebody named Dr. Ford, and he was saying that like every time you put a high pass, then it's like a 90-degree phase rotation, basically.
Yeah. So I don't know like the super details of it, but I do know that I can sometimes hear some noticeable phasing, but not anything that's unpleasurable. It's just like, oh, okay, that kind of like when you put a pool tech on and you boost in and attenuate at the same rate on the low end. You're like, okay, that messes with the phase, but it's kind of cool,
Right. Yes.
So, like as far as that explanation is about as deep as I've gone into it. But I know from what I've dabbled in, like, yes, there are, there's phase issues that come up. I'm using that. And then I'm basically doing like some saturation, some different, like some soft clipping. And then I'm running it into ozone and I get the 808, the kick and I'll leave the snare, but really it's the 808 and the kick to a level, where I'm hitting, consistently a -8 RMS loud, I want it loud. And it sucks because if we didn't have to do the loudness thing, people have no idea how amazing mixes would sound.
I know.
You had no idea how much depth you would get out of these mixes and you could really do what you want, but that's just not the world we live in. So, unfortunately, because of how the game is, you either adapt or you become extinct. So at that point, I'm pushing this to where basically to the point of clipping. Like I want to get it as close to where it's breaking apart as I can get. And then maybe just dial it back a little bit. But I typically do a really fast release. Like maybe I'm using Ozone. So I don't know if it's seconds, but the Ozone Pro, the limiter, but I'm putting it in transient mode. So instead of the modern on the I guess maybe it's IR4 or IC4 or impulse response. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Like it has a little
in their maximizer,
right?
Yeah,
in the maximizer. So I'm using it in transient mode on the version 4, and what that does is that just it's a little bit slower attack on the limiter.
Feels more natural, Right. They just came out, right?
Right. And so they broke it down into, these, the digital version, the plug-in versions, and they broke it up into sections. And so they have a section where it's actually like the drive section. And I get a lot of good saturation and volume out of that as well. So that's kind of consistently been in my chain. And I do use the Class A mastering from Shadow Hills, the plugin alliance. So I'm completely in the box now. I used to do summing mixer. I used to have VCA compressors, things like that. And over the years, I'm completely in the box now. And so if anything I'm saying, it's the plugin version of it. But yeah, the Shadow Hills mastering compressor. But the newer version for Plugin Alliance is the Class A mastering. And I typically will put the mono maker on that. I'll run it in a still version. So that's going to add some more low end harmonics as opposed to like the nickel, which is a little bit more top end, at least from what my ears hear. And I don't run the opto. I run it in discrete mode, but I don't even do compression. If I do, it's like the most slightest movement of the needle, the tickle on it. And I think that's just for me to get some sort of satisfaction. You know, it's not audible at all. But like, yeah, it's doing something, or I've got the threshold set correct. I don't know. And it's a gain staging thing. But yeah, so I'll use that and I'll put that mono mode maybe up to like 120, 80 sometimes. Because when you get the bass, low bass in the side field, it gets kind of weird, especially like if you're having like maybe a bass that has some movement in it. That's not just a real like static sine wave type bass. But maybe can have like almost like a bass synth or bass, that has a little movement to it. When that low end starts getting shifting on the left and right sides, it sounds kind of weird. So so tightening it up to the point of like the heavy bass, up through 60, up through 80, even up to 120, it can help focus that down there, because bass is in general omnidirectional, but when you start throwing it in different levels on different sides, it can mess with some things. So I do that to help with that. Sometimes I take it off if it doesn't need it, but that's sort of like how it's preset.
Yeah, it's a traditional move, right? Because of vinyl records, they had to have the bass monoed, otherwise the needle would just like fly off the record, right? So it's it's based in science. I feel like so many of the things that we do are based on how we're used to hearing music, and we're used to hearing music because of the history of music, and like we love the records that have all the saturation, and we love those old records that have mono in the bass because of the vinyl, and like so much of what we're doing and the way we like to hear it is because of how it's always been done. And so it's
but we like
thing.
that for a reason, though,
right?
You know what I mean? Like it's not. We didn't like that to say well, I have to pick something I like, so I pick this. It's like, no, this is what feels good. This is what sounds good. And we do, like, we still chase that. And you and I chase a different feeling than what younger engineers and those guys chase, I'm sure we probably chase a much warmer sound. And they're looking for, a more bright and, more detail. Like I listened to some old stuff that I used to think was amazing. And now I'm like, oh man, that thing's, you call it warm, I call it lacking top end. And I was like, I prefer the detail now. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like a C800 is like the last microphone I would want to buy.
Really, I love the C800. I think they sound amazing.
Like I prefer like a 251 style.
Yeah, those are cool
curve.
too. Those are cool too. But
it's a different curve.
Yeah, but sometimes the bite in those, but they sound, man. You're talking, you're getting up $8,000 microphones.
No, I haven't actually used one. I've only used the Slate version, right? So
yeah, well, the 251 it really sounds good. But I think like for pop, R&B, hip hop, if you want that lush sound that you look for, that polish, the sweet top end, but it's still detailed, but not scratchy, and it has a big bottom end in it, like you can't beat the C800. But if the tube goes bad, it's terrible. And on the wrong people, it's terrible.
Right.
But I was still like, it's probably my favorite microphone to mix when it sounds good. I mean, it just sounds amazing.
Yeah. On the right vocalist, the right microphone.
The 251's cool too. A lot of the stuff I was doing for August 08. So I got to mix his new project coming out, and they actually went back and went with another mixer, but I got a mix on there. But he recorded, it hasn't come out yet, but he recorded that with a 251, and it sounded really, really good. It just has a little more bite to me than the C800, but the top end's a little bit rounder. So it's got
right, exactly.
It's whereas the C800 has that presence throughout, but it's very open on the top end, but very, very smooth. It's just like it's like butter, and that thing sounds good.
Amazing. Well, so I'll have to rethink my position and try one out.
Yeah, give it a shot, man. Just don't shoot it down, you know?
I won't shoot it down. All right, cool. I was just, coming from that, like, born in the 80s, like the warm sound thing, Yeah. I just because it's already getting long in the tooth, I think maybe let's head over to the Sauce segment and we can listen to some of the music that you've worked on. I'm sure some of the music you've worked on is so ubiquitous that I'm sure so many people have already heard it. But you sent me a track called "Falling Off" or "Fallen Off" by Tyler Loyal. Mm-hmm. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we'll chat about it. Sound cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sneaky links hit better when it's who. When it's the girl that been beefing with you. I know it's toxic, but I swear it's true. Only Lord knows all that we've been through. Why she know me better than you do? I'd rather lose you than the argument, babe. I gotta be prepared in case I lose. We falling off. So sick of the baggage that you bring, I'm falling back on you, babe. Focus on myself and I lose track of you, babe. Stuck on what it was, not what it is lately. I'm falling off. Way too young and numb, so I would rather just detach from you, babe. Swear the lust keep calling, I can't pass on it, babe. You ring my line and wanna ring, I'll pass on it, babe. You begging a nigga for the truth. I love myself way more than I love you. Yeah, shit, think my biggest fear is coming true. Which is me losing all my feelings for you. Oh, yeah, look, ever since you brought up shit that you done thought of, I get less attracted. That's when I got caught up. You'll be tripping more than we make love, I just wanna fuck.
Yeah, man, sounds awesome. I love just the way like the first kick comes in at the very, very beginning after that kind of very soft intro and just like hits you, like, like dynamics, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, super cool.
And the vocals sound great. I'm assuming you got this in the production, but like all those like kind of like warped, slowed down vocal effects are super dope.
Yeah,
and the vocal sounds great.
Yeah. So funny thing is that wasn't even the version, like the mastered version that I sent, and I was like highly disappointed because like I blew this mix out of the water. Like when I initially, and I don't normally feel that way about stuff, but like where the depth was like on my version, all that stuff. But sometimes when you send it in, some things along the way get adjusted and they wanted to go with, a mastering engineer or somebody else did something different. And, so it lost kind of a little bit of the magic, but I still think it's a really good record. The artist, he's based out of Boston, Tyler Loyal. He's really good. I think it's a good song. And, it was a really fun mix I've got to do recently, but I really liked where the drums were at in that. And, and I did some cool stuff with it, like that I don't normally do. I think I used like lo-fi on the snare and I ended up knocking it down, like the bit depth on it. Cause it was like a little bit sharp, but it kind of had like almost too, I don't know, like digitally on top, or like it kind of had some extra. And in lo-fi, I used the Avid lo-fi plugin and it got rid of the reverb that they had on there because it was like more of like a top end, like almost like a plate that they had, and it was low. But in context, I wasn't missing it, and it really made it feel kind of like just like this flat, like flat,
like a side stick or something.
Yeah, it sounded cool, so I got to lead. They left that in the kick drum, but this is one of the first ones where I was using Spectre.
Is that like it's like an EQ?
Well, it looks like an EQ, but it's a harmonic saturation plugin, and it can do different types of harmonic saturation. But you boost it, like how it can only go up, but you basically add this saturation in different areas, and you can do mild, medium, or heavy, or soft, medium, and heavy, something like that. It can do parallel, and it can do mid side on it, and it's really, really sick. So I was using that on the kick, so it's like I kind of boosted the low end in it, but then I boosted the top end to get a little bit more detail out of it, and then I don't remember with the bass. I think I used CLA bass on the low end. on that
really?
one. I think it's a great little plugin. I mean, the CLA plugins are really, really awesome. They're great tools, especially if you want to do something quick.
Yes,
but that kind of gave